the weekly Industry Angel podcast hears from business leaders and entrepreneurs who share their stories and that all-important light bulb moment. This can inspire us all and maybe scratch that itch and kickstart that idea that keeps you awake at night. Hi, my name's Ian Farrer. Today we have author, social entrepreneur and productivity ninja, Graham Allcott. Thanks for joining us, Graham.
Hi, good to be here.
Now, Graham, you live in Brighton on the south coast with your wife and son, yeah?
That's correct, yeah.
Apparently, you're an Aston Villa fan, so how does that work?
I spend a lot of time in cars, so I have a season ticket at Villa for my sins this season. It's terrible. I used to do it on the train, and it actually used to be a really good time for me in terms of kind of reviewing my work, and I used to use it as really good thinking time. These days, I take my son up with me. My family's all based in the Midlands, so I do a lot of driving at night and lots of ninja moves like putting him to bed in our house in Brighton and then waking him up basically like taking him out of the bed as soon as he's gone to sleep, trying not to wake him up and putting him in the car so he kind of wakes up in another place at his grandparents' house. So yeah, it's a lot of logistical operation, and lots of people would question my devotion. And it's one of those things that you cannot rationalize. If you're a fellow long-suffering football fan of another team, then I'm sure you'll relate.
Well, if you can hear my accent, we've got two northeast clubs up here, Graham, and we're in the same boat. I guess we're gonna have a bit of a relegation battle ourselves, and it's.
Well, but you're both doing better than Villa, so there you go. That puts it.
Well, you guys came up to us on January 2nd, and what a following that you had for a team that's in the bottom. So Graham, you mentioned there you've got a son, and I'm a family man myself, and I now know the productivity and family life don't really mix very well together.
I mean, I think it's about getting the right, kind of balance between these things. But I also think it depends what you want to be productive about. So I think for me, having days where my sole intention is to spend time with my son and to be, present with him and with family life, I think that's a productive thing. I think you can view that as a productive thing. I also think that, so I have. In my book, How to Be a Productivity Ninja, one of the characteristics of the ninja is preparedness. And part of preparedness is rest and relaxation and focusing your mind on other things. And, I think viewing family time and family life and actually any downtime as kind of something to feel guilty about because you're not being productive, but actually a vital part of ninja preparedness, I think is a really nice mindset to make sure that we, get the balance right in our lives.
That's a fantastic answer. I'm going to have to take a few of those tips on board, Graham. So just in terms of your books you touched upon there, I know you've got a range of books out there at the moment. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the range and maybe the content of them and how we could use them in our lives?
Yeah, sure. So the main one that I'm probably most well known for is called How to Be a Productivity Ninja. And it's basically my take on, how I do productivity. And it came about really from me falling into teaching productivity to people a few years ago. I was the person who about 12, 13 years ago, something like that, actually had to phone up the guy who I'd booked a time management training course with and tell him that I was double booked and couldn't go. So that was me. And, if you'd have said to me at that stage, you'd be teaching other people how to be productive, I'd have laughed. But I think it was something that I realized I really needed, and therefore sort of fell into not only developing my own systems, but then because I was so passionate about that, fell into teaching other people because everyone was saying, what's this productivity stuff? Tell me about it. Talk to me about it. So really, How to Be a Productivity Ninja then was really the culmination of about 4 years of me going into businesses and, working with people at their desks and talking to people about their real stuff and getting people's real inboxes to zero and working out how to, create better workflow on people's desks and in people's lives and everything else. And the book was then really easy to write because it was kind of very, very grounded in all of those experiences of having gone in and done it and taught it and coached it and lived it for 4 or 5 years. So yeah, How to Be a Productivity Ninja came out in 2014. We had a kind of self-published version before that, but the current version came out in 2014. It's translated into a few different languages. It's been it was top of the WHS Business chart. Always ranks pretty highly on Amazon for those kind of categories. So yeah, that's probably the one that I'm most well known for.
If I just jump in there, Graham, you mentioned that you had a sort of self-published version of that. So did you find that the book sort of came from you blogging maybe, or just writing from the heart, and then suddenly a book started to develop? Or
it was actually more I initially just really wanted to put everything that we'd been teaching and kind of my approach and the 9 characteristics of the productivity ninja and all that stuff just into a book. And the original intention was to get a publishing deal and have a publisher behind it originally. And what happened was I had an agent at that point who had got me a publishing deal, and I was about to sign it. And then the publishers were putting so many caveats in the way in terms of, so I wanted to call it How to Be a Productivity Ninja, and they wanted to call it Do More in Less Time, which I just thought was, just a really bad title and also nothing to do with what I'm about. And, it was like this very sort of painful realization that the people who I was dealing with just did not share my vision for it. So I just backed away from it and did it self-published. And I thought, how hard can this be? It's really easy to do a book these days as self-published. And that is true, but it's only half true. So it's really easy to get a book out there into the world. It's very difficult to develop all the skills that a good publisher will have. So what I realized over time was I could get the book onto Amazon. I could actually I actually did reasonably well with sales on Amazon, but getting it into the bookshops and getting it into Waterstones and getting it around the world and selling translation rights and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you kind of need a publisher to do a lot of that stuff unless you want to become a publisher yourself, So if you have nothing else to do with your time and that kind of feels like what you should do yourself, you can certainly develop all those skills yourself. But like, why would you not, jump on the back of a good publisher who knows how to do all of that kind of stuff already, and it just feels like a shortcut for me was to go that route. So it was originally a self-published book, and then once it was out and we were selling copies of it and publishers could see it, I then had very different publishing deals on the table because all of the publishers could see that it was something that I was capable of marketing, and they could see that it was something that was already out there and had good word of mouth around it. So I ended up with Icon, which is a small publisher based in London and Cambridge. And really happy. I mean, they've really taken it to the next level. So I'm very happy with. I was very happy with going self-published initially, but I'm very happy to be published by Icon these days.
I mean, that's a great story, Graham, because there's a book in everybody. So I'm sure people listen to this. I mean, that's a good bit of advice. So in terms of the first book, that was that one, and then from then.
Yes, I've done 2 other books. So I did a book called Introducing Productivity. So my current publisher, Icon, they have a series called Introducing, and it's kind of similar to the Dummy series or the Brilliant series or one of those. So it was slightly a more, I would say, generic book. So it's me talking about what else is out there in terms of productivity content and different kind of ideas and stuff like that. But it's a book that I had really a lot of fun writing. It's a kind of A to Z of productivity. It's a very kind of dip in, nice kind of sort of very simple coffee table kind of book, really. So I did that one, and then a year or so ago, I did a book called Knowledge Ninja, which is basically taking a lot of the productivity themes but applying that to study skills. Which again, I was someone who, like, I was pretty good during lessons, but I was terrible at organized study at school. And part of the book sort of reconciles that by at the beginning reading out some of my really bad school reports of, Graham cannot manage his time and Graham's writing is pretty average and stuff like that has, since been, nicely compounded. But so writing that book was much more about looking at the psychology around studying, the psychology of learning, how the brain retains information, and kind of doing a bit of a deep dive into some of the neuroscience and theory around that stuff, and then creating what I hope and what I've been told by lots of folks who've read it is a very accessible guide to studying for generally for sort of 16 plus, I would say, is probably the best way of describing it. So we've had a lot of people younger than that read it, but it tends to be the sort of 16 to 18 and then into sort of degree and mature student kind of audience who really seem to kind of get that book. That's Knowledge Ninja. And then I'm working on a 4th one, which will be coming out in, I think, April 2017. And that's going to be based around really exploring the whole topic of work-life balance and the topic of what is happiness and success for people in their lives. And, really looking at, I think productivity is one aspect of that, but productivity for what and for why. So it's kind of looking slightly beyond productivity and into kind of what makes us successful, and how do we define that success?
It's amazing, Graham. I mean, I've done a little bit of research on you, and I've seen a few videos on YouTube. Where do you get your ideas from? I see you did a fast.
Oh yeah, yeah. So that was yeah, a couple of years ago. I decided I'd put Productivity Ninja out there into the world, and then as I often do, rather than just go, okay, so that's what I think about productivity. My reaction was, okay, the book's out there now, so now I need to question everything that's in that book. So I did a year of extreme productivity experiments. So I did one where, so the month you're talking about was Fuel, where I ate the optimum diet for productivity for about 3 weeks. And then I fasted for Ramadan. There's a great blog and website called productivemuslim.com, which is based in the Middle East. And it's kind of like for lots of the sort of young, hip, working Muslims who they want productivity advice, but also they want advice about how to be a good Muslim and, live the lifestyle of a good Muslim. So I worked with those guys, and they told me how to fast for Ramadan. And I ended up on the Islam channel as well, like as a kind of
Wow.
weird sort of Islamic celebrity for a short period of time. But yeah, that was that 1 month. And then I did a month where I made decisions by the throw of a dice when I was procrastinating. And I did another month where I only looked at email on Fridays and let it build up Monday, Saturday to Thursday. And lots of other ones, flipping the 9 to 5, where I worked 5 a.m. till 9 a.m. and then clocked off at 9 a.m. That was pretty fun. But yeah, and the idea of that was to sort of go to quite extreme places and question my habits in some quite extreme ways, and then see what I could learn from that could be applicable just kind of day to day. Like none of those things were meant to be like sustainable things that you could do forever, but they're more just like I think you learn from extremities, and I think you learn from constraints and putting yourself in slightly awkward positions and working out from that position of constraint like what matters and what is the one thing that I'm going to really preserve, given that I can only preserve one thing. And that's the sort of stuff that really fascinates me. So that was like a year of just sort of playing around. It was actually exhausting because changing your habits is really hard, and like reacting to change is really hard, and like doing that alongside trying to write and trying to run a business. So we have a business called Think Productive that takes all this productivity stuff around to businesses. Trying to do all that stuff alongside, working 5 till 9 a.m. and all these other crazy things was, it was pretty exhausting year. But it was also, a lot of fun, and I learned loads from doing it as well.
The one thing that I just couldn't get my head around, Graham, it's the email on a Friday thing. I couldn't do it. When you're on holiday, you're constantly checking emails. How do you do? I mean, I got an email from you, and it said you have to question yourself if you want a reply back from me. You might get a reply back on Tuesday or a Thursday, but other than that, you've got to look into yourself. I'm like, wow, that's a great way of thinking about things. Surely people just can't handle that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element for me in terms of all of this, which is like, Productivity Ninja is a beautiful but very constraining rod for my own back. So it sort of like creates this thing where I have to model the best of productivity, and I have to walk my talk. And, if I'm 2 minutes late for a meeting, it's like, haha, the Productivity Ninja is late. And so cunningly, I made the 9th characteristic of Productivity Ninja is human, not superhero. So like we screw up too, and that's fine. But that out of office you're describing is something I have turned on all the time. So I constantly have out of office on, and it basically says I'm processing email Tuesday evening and Thursday evening. So I have an assistant who works with me on that. And, the idea is to sort of spend as little time in the inbox as possible. And that came directly out of doing that experiment. So the experiment was kind of weird because it was like I only had Friday as the only day that I had access to my email. And so like Thursday evening became like Christmas Eve. It was like, what's going to be in my inbox? It just became this like really, I felt like a kid. It was like really exciting.
That's exciting, but were you not worried as well?
Yeah, I mean, there was one thing that nearly went wrong, which was my accountant had sent me through some stuff that had to be sent off to the tax people before the end of the month. And then like the Friday was like the first of the following month or whatever. So that was like the one thing that could have gone really wrong. But like luckily, my accountant received the out of office from me saying I will not be online. No, really, I will not be online. And so he called me and he said, hey, I need these documents. And I was like, yeah, cool. So, I think it's one of those things where people get obsessed with email when email is not the only medium of communication. And, really what a lot of that constraint is about for me is about trying to create some boundaries around my own attention. So it's about trying to find, ways for me to do quality thinking. And often quality thinking becomes difficult when your mind is kind of, constantly tapped on the shoulder by like all those tiny little emails that are coming in, most of which make no difference to your life. So, like that is really difficult stuff for people to hear. And I don't suggest that everybody checks their email only twice a week. And I certainly don't suggest that people, follow through on all those kind of crazy experiments that I did. And, they come with like the health warning of I am doing this extreme stuff so that you don't have to, and I'm going to learn from it and tell you what I find. So that's kind of like the premise of where it starts. But the flip side of that is everyone should find time to live outside of their email inbox and recognize that thinking is not a luxury. Thinking is the work that we do. And whether that's like turning your inbox off for half an hour of every hour, or whether it's turning it off one day a week and working from home, like whatever the structure is, the structure doesn't really matter. The principle of reclaiming your attention and reclaiming your thinking is what really matters.
I mean, I loved that email from you, and it did resonate with me, and it gave me a lot of thinking time. Maybe I should try this. So I've been trying the Pomodoro method, where I've been doing 25 minutes. And, it's really helped me focus, have 5 minutes break after that, and then do another Pomodoro of another 25 minutes. And It's great for just cracking through.
And it's a really nice way of, what that's about for me is like, it's kind of gamification of attention, right? So it's like you do your 25 minutes, then you have your 5 minute break, and knowing that you have that attention chunk of 25 minutes, it's a little bit like, I describe it as like, it's a bit like, when you watch the TV show Countdown, and suddenly you can do maths much quicker because like you can see the clock ticking. And I think sometimes just having that little bit of a game about it, just, it just makes work a bit more fun and engaging,
Now let's hear from our sponsors. Jump over to Facebook and search for Northeast Happening. These are the guys that take social media to the next level. If you'd like to reach a huge target audience, be sure to like their page and ask how they can make your social media happen. Now back to Graham Allcott. We've just discussed their email. Is there anything else within the books that you could maybe pass our listeners as an example they could use in their day-to-day lives? Maybe a try before you buy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is just the amount of stuff that you carry around with you in your head. And one of the things I talk about is just this idea of Zen-like calm. So being in the moment and present on whatever it is that you're working on. So if you think about the times when you feel like you're most productive, if I say, when are you most productive? Most people say back to me something like, when I'm on a deadline. And it's not actually the deadline that makes you productive. It's the fact that the deadline forces you into a state of Zen-like calm. It forces you into a state of, this is the one thing that I can focus on right now. And I'm not thinking about what I'm having for dinner, and I'm not thinking about my emails, because I have this deadline and it's at 5:00 and it's me and the text and the deadline, and that's kind of it. So that's Zen-like calm. And I think you can get to that place much more regularly and without the need for deadlines to force you there. And part of what that's about is not carrying all that other stuff in your head. So what takes us out of that sort of being in that present kind of state is, what am I doing a week on Friday? And have I got that document over to that person? And, this is a new email come in, and, I should check that out on the web and research it, and all those little thoughts that we have. So finding ways to be able to write those things down, get them out of your head, and to ultimately collect that stuff in what I call the second brain. And the second brain can be a A4 pad, or it can be an online app, or it can be the Microsoft Outlook tasks function, or it can be Evernote. It can be so many different things, but just like finding a place where you can say, that becomes my memory, that becomes my brain, and then it allows your real brain to become the strategic and creative, brilliant brain it can be. Because the brain is amazing at being strategic and creative, and rubbish at remembering things. And it's like, I think we just have to realize that that's a weakness and start to do something about it.
Yeah, you touched upon something brilliantly there. And what I like to do is write things down. That's what helps me. I don't like things online. I mean, it's probably easier if I have a spreadsheet or something, but it's the fact that I'm writing it down in a notebook, and I write with a fountain pen to make sure that I'm not just scribbling really crazily. And it just helps. That sort of works for me. So I guess people can take from that is that Zen-like approach, it doesn't have to be a one size fits all.
Yeah, completely. And I think, why does it help when we feel overwhelmed and then we write a list of things and then we feel much better? Because ultimately we haven't done any of the things on the list in that time that we've just written them down. All we've done is we've reminded our brain, we've got some clarity and control over what those things are. And we've externalized it so we can see them all in front of us, and we know that we're not going to miss anything. But I think the ultimate thing with writing things down is like, as you go through the process of writing it, it's like something's happening in your brain in terms of just getting that reminder and getting that control. So for me, it's like the process of the actual writing itself should be seen as something that aids your thinking rather than just like a chore of, oh, I need to write everything down. It's actually about sort of rehearsing your thinking, reminding yourself of stuff, like, and seeing the pen as almost like a sort of conduit to doing proper thinking. And I think, most people that we work with, very senior people in very successful organizations either don't find the time to do quality thinking, or they don't prioritize it because they feel too under pressure and they feel either fear or guilt around that. And anything you can do, whether it's just a simple thing like writing things down, whether it's telling people to make sure they go for a walk and get some fresh air and do some thinking that way, but anything you can do that creates habits around doing quality thinking is going to be the thing that makes you successful. Think about the things in your job that cannot be automated by robots in the next 20 years. Like, that's the stuff where you add value. And for me, all of that is the thinking part of the job.
Graham, I could listen to you all day, and I guess you're fully booked for speaking. Obviously, this is all about productivity, but in terms of your life, do you read any other books that maybe could help you with some areas that you're not so smart at?
Yeah, do you mean like books that I like that have helped to sort of change me, or books that have other books on productivity, or
books that would change you, or books that you could recommend our listeners? What's really resonated with you?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's obviously a load of classic ones and ones that I talk about in my book. So Getting Things Done by David Allen is the sort of the classic productivity book for me. Linchpin by Seth Godin is probably the more sort of heartfelt, very kind of emotionally intelligent productivity book, which I just really love. That's had a big influence on me too. And stuff that I've been reading, just not necessarily productivity, but more widely. So I just reread over Christmas, actually, The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor, which is just a huge, incredible book. That a lot of it just talks about some of the kind of neuroscience of how to wire the brain to be happy, and how to develop good habits. And there's just some really golden stuff in there. So that's a really good one. And Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, which is a very deep kind of soul-searching book around death and how to die well, and kind of how, and it's also kind of how the Western world and the medical world in particular treats death and dying and the process of dying. And it's it's obviously one of those things that we all have to face on one day or another. And so stuff like that, I think, for me, it's very important, because I think like those kind of other perspectives on life and work and family and all those kind of wider topics. I think all of those things kind of feed into productivity, and productivity feeds into all of them. And I think it's it's really important for me to kind of take inspiration from lots of unusual and different places. Oh, one more, which is a book called Yes and, which I read over Christmas as well, which is lessons. I can't remember the author's name, and so apologies to those authors who are brilliant. But it's called Yes and Lessons from the Second City, and it's all about improvised comedy. So people who get on stage with literally like a one-word idea that the audience has just chucked at them 2 seconds ago, and then they make like a half an hour play just from that one word. It's kind of the extension of Whose Line Is It Anyway, if you've seen that TV show. But there's some really great parallels between how teams gather around an idea, and how teams collaborate and make stuff happen from nothing. And a lot of stuff that I think is really valuable and can resonate a lot more in the business world than it perhaps has done. From taking some of these techniques from improvised comedy. So I think for me, it's like like looking at a very wide sort of palette, really, of sort of different ideas and different people's kind of takes on the world. I think there's always something that you can bring that back to productivity, and something also that productivity can help with all those different things as well.
I totally agree. Reading a subject just totally off the wall, you can take some nuggets of information out of that you would never have thought that you would have. It's fantastic. We've got our very own Ross Noble, and he's awesome at that. I don't know if you've ever seen Ross Noble do that.
Yes,
he'll just shout at the audience, give me something. Someone shouts banana, and then for the next half an hour he's talking about banana.
Yeah. And if you're at all a fan of Ross Noble, one thing I can really recommend is there's a podcast called The Comedian's Comedian. I don't know if you've come across that. Guy called Stuart Goldsmith, who is a comedian himself, and he goes around and interviews other comedians. The episode with Ross Noble is like, it's in 2 parts, so it's like nearly 2 hours of stuff. But it's kind of him talking about like his methodology and how he works and how he creates this stuff from nothing, and it's absolutely like one of the most fascinating things you'll ever hear. So yeah, thecomedianscomedian.com is the name of the podcast, and yes, I'm a big fan of that one.
Thanks to that, Graham. I'll definitely take a look at that. I'm scribbling away furiously here. So if there's one thing you could leave us with, the best bit of advice you've ever been given. I love to ask this question, sorry.
The best bit of advice you've ever... Well, I'll tell you one that I read in that Second City book over Christmas, actually, which is really great. So, and I'm going to get this slightly wrong now. So again, like I feel like I'm really doing those authors a disservice. But he describes the advice that he was given by the founder of Second City. So Second City is like a very well-known improvised comedy theater based in Chicago. Which is like the home of this stuff, and it's like, you know, it's responsible for, so like for example, Wayne's World, the character of Wayne was improvised by Mike Myers on that stage, you know, so it's like they are hugely influential. John Candy went through there, Amy Poehler, like so many of the kind of big American names in comedy have kind of been through that theater. But the founder of that, his kind of sort of little mantra for being an entrepreneur was, and I'm going to slightly paraphrase and maybe get this wrong, but like it's basically have a vision, recruit an amazing team of people around it, and then get the hell out of the way. And like for me, that's like a big part of, you know, what I need to do with my business, and you know, in terms of how I spend my time is kind of, you know, once the workshops are set up and once people know what they're doing, it's like I need to get out of the way and let people develop those and take those to the next level, and then I need to get on with, you know, being locked away and writing on, you know, working on the next book or whatever. I just love that kind of, you know, have the idea, recruit great people, and then get the hell out of the way.
So in terms of where we could find you, Graham?
Yeah, just on the internet mainly. So I'm at grahamallcott.com. We have thinkproductive.co.uk and thinkproductive.com around the world. And I'm on Twitter, so yeah, at me and all that good stuff is just at Graham.
Just one more question before you go. How many times have you said ninja in your life?
Far too many, and yeah, if I could find a way of automating that, that'd be great.
Well, Graham, you've been a star, and thanks very much for that.
Cool, thanks, Ian. Pleasure.
Well, that was Graham Allcott talking productivity. I'm definitely going to read the Productivity Ninja. And please let me know your feedback if you've enjoyed what Graham had to say, or if you've read his books maybe. And I'll try and share your thoughts and give a few shout outs on future editions. So until next time, I'm Ian Farrer, and thanks for listening.